You're listening to episode 117 of Financial Confidence. Hey, and thank you for joining us for Financial Confidence here on WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network. I'm your host, Lynn Demmons. That's Demmons, no demons here, Demmons. We thank you so much for tuning in with us, where we're helping you to make your money, keep your money, and grow your money so you can do those things that you're called to do. That's to build generational wealth and leave an inheritance for your children's children. I just want you to know that you are not an accident. You are not here on accident. This is divinely ordained, this moment. So I want you to make sure you get some pen and paper and get ready for this courageous conversation, because you don't want to miss it. Make every moment count. Make sure that you're paying the most attention as we move forward with our conversation today. We have some exciting information to share with you. But before we get to that, just want to remind you of our guiding principle for this show, which is Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. We also ask that you pray over your finances so you can do those things that you're called to do. So if you will, bow with me. Lord, help us to value the things in this world that are really valuable. That's our relationship with you, our lives, and our families. Help make us responsible stewards of your financial resources, and let us trust your holy word. Eternal glory in thy son Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, guys, I told you it was going to be an amazing show for us today, but guess what? We also want to hear from you. We want to hear your success stories. So make sure you give us a call, 470-236-8282, or email us your story at financialconfidence2020@gmail.com. That's financialconfidence2020@gmail.com. So have you ever wanted to know more about starting a nonprofit, right? We always know we want to give back in the community. We want to do something bigger than ourselves. And we all think oftentimes we think, right, a nonprofit is the way to do that. Yes? But many of us, we try to self-fund to get started because we don't know where to go. Well, guess what? I have somebody that's going to help you today. So get ready. Make sure you get some great notes. Also, don't forget, share this out, because sharing is caring. So guess what, guys? I have a special guest with us today, Miss Jasmine Fain. Yes, ma'am. She is going to help us. Jasmine, how are you?
Good. How are you today? How are you?
I am great. I am so glad that you are here today. We have some exciting questions that we want to ask you. But before we get into that, just share a little bit about yourself with our listening audience so they can know a little bit more about Miss Fain.
Yes. So first and foremost, I am a Southern Dallas native, an Oklahoma State alumna. So go Pokes forever. I've served as the executive director over a nonprofit before. I've been the marketing director over an NGO in South Africa and here in Dallas. But most importantly, I've served the role of being a nonprofit business development coach for the past couple of months, teaching nonprofits how to create cash flow without grants. And then now the role that I serve in building my company, my baby almost, is Empower You, which is a social impact tech startup company where we have built out a marketplace to connect nonprofit programs with underrepresented communities, really helping reduce that turnover rate in nonprofit programs. So that's my day-to-day life, my career in a short summary, and being the CEO of Empower You on a daily basis. So yeah.
Awesome. So that's very exciting. I want to jump in right away and ask you those questions. But we all know that when we think about our finances, there are things in our past that impacted us either positively or negatively in the way that we deal with money. So to help our audiences relate with you, will you share a little bit of your history with us? So do you have that one person in your life who influenced you in regards to money when you were a child? And if so, and it may be more than one person, right? And what was that, positive or negative?
Yeah, so it's actually funny. My mom's a financial analyst. So I grew up in a household with someone who is keen to money and math. And then my father is an entrepreneur. So I was raised around two people who understood money in a sense. And then my mom, when it came to math homework and count, like she made sure I knew how to count money before anything else. And so, but I can say as I got older, my relationship with money changed. As I was in college, I really got into the gap of the nonprofit world and kind of realized money doesn't come as easily when you're just in the comfort of your parents' home. And so, as I became a student leader, all student organizations are in a sense a mini version of nonprofits. And I always reached points in my student government or student organization career where we were at a negative budget. I don't even know what was going on at Oklahoma State, but I was always handed a negative budget. I remember one instance of we were given a step show, and I was running it, and we were given a negative budget, and I was like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna pull this off? And just immediately, and I say it was divine, a divine idea, because I was like sponsorships, investors, sponsorships. And so we funded the entire event off of donations and sponsorships. We went from a negative budget all the way to fully funded. And so that is how my relationship with money has been. I always love to tell my clients, money is a tool to use to get you to a destination. And money has no control over how big of an impact you can make. Does it have a factor? Yes, most definitely. We all, especially in the nonprofit world, we're like, we need money. And in our lives, we need money. But it has no physical control over you. As long as you know how to place it and to not let it take dominion over you, you can utilize it for whatever you want to use it for. So that's been my relationship. And it's been a process to change my mindset into that and realize it doesn't have control over me. It took trial and error and having to be faced with those situations of always being handed a zero budget or a negative budget to be like, I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to get the money, and it might come out of nowhere, but I know it's coming from somewhere.
Right. So I love it. You made several valid points. And if I try to go back and pinpoint all of those, we'll be here all day. But you did say one thing that I want to bring back to the forefront. And I need to make sure that all of our young people are listening to this. She said, money doesn't come as easy as it does when you're in your mom's or mom or your dad's house, right? It doesn't come that easy when you get out into the real world. It's a completely different ball game. So you have to know how to make things work. And I love the example that you share about starting out with that negative budget. We've all come into different situations where you've been given a negative budget and you have to figure out, how do I now turn this into a positive? How do I now, but like one of my friends used to say, how do I make $1 out of 15 cents type situation, right? Okay, awesome. So Jasmine, really quickly, just thinking back a little bit, what was your first job? Do you remember what that was? And what did you do with that first paycheck?
My first job, so I was blessed to go throughout high school and not have to work. But as soon as I got to college, I actually chose to work just to occupy myself. And also I gained work study. So I was like, well, if, the government's going to pay for me to work, let me just go and do that. And so I actually worked for Oklahoma State's athletic department. I was in the suites. It's so funny because it's all revolved around money again. But I was around all the donors, the big wig donors. I met Boone Pickens. May he rest his soul in peace. I met all the big donors for Oklahoma State. And so being immersed in that, I'm like, whoa. This is crazy. I'm around all these people, gaining connections. And so for me, that was my first job. I completely enjoyed it. It gave me something to do, but it also exposed me to an atmosphere I did not know was possible for me. Yes, I was raised here in Dallas under a middle class home. But when we talk about the scalability of money, when we talk about, seeing people who do jobs that are not typical to the 9 to 5, and they're making millions of dollars, it really exposed me to a lot of that. So I'm completely grateful for my first job. I met some friends, lifetime friends doing it, but it just completely exposed me to a lot of things with capital and money that I just did not know was possible and out there. So.
Okay, so it's funny. So I also worked in the athletic department in college as part of my work study program. So I'm remembering that, but I was on the scholarship side with the athletes and dealing with that part of it, not the donor side of it. So it's really interesting to hear that part, but I'll follow up with you on that later. With that being said, so your first paycheck, it applied to your college degree, or did you actually get a check from working in the athletic department?
So, because I worked there for a couple of years, so I would say the first year I actually got the physical check, and at that point, it's so like you're having me like reminisce about how I was managing money. I just remember my dad was sending like $100 like every month. And that was like my $100 to straight. And not that like he would just send me $100 and just left me to dry, y'all. Let me just make that disclaimer. Like it was just like extra money. I had a meal plan. I was fed every day. I was good. But I just remember getting that $100, and it became real to me that, oh my gosh, I need to stretch this out. So when I got my first paycheck, I think because he had already kind of unconsciously instilled that money management into my mind, I got my first paycheck and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to stretch this out. I need to figure out how to budget this and all this. And I look back on my budgeting back then, it was not the best. It's way better now, but it was still some form of it. But once I kept working, I eventually let them apply to my actual tuition and didn't have to worry about it as much. But I can say going back to just first memories of money management, it was like going from high school when you can call up your parents and say, hey, like I have prom or I have this game and I just need this money every week, to like going, I went 4 hours away to the middle of the country in Stillwater, and my parents are miles away, and when I call, it's like, well, I just gave you $100 for the month, so what did you do with it? And so yeah.
Awesome. So let's get to your work with the nonprofit, right? And I appreciate you being candid with us and sharing your story. But you intrigued me earlier, and you said something about nonprofits being able to create cash flow. So how do they do that without grants? Because we know that's a huge thing, right? That's what we hear about all the time. Go after the grant. Get this money so that you can now run the programs, do the things you need to do within your nonprofit. So how can a nonprofit create that type of cash flow without that?
Yeah. And I just want to be as real as possible. I'm a very transparent person when it comes to, I can say, systemic racism and systemic wealth gaps in the nonprofit world. And that's where a lot of that stems. I can say, nonprofits never started the way we think of them as modern day. They started as tax loopholes for the 1% and the rich. And so when you gather, BIPOC founders who actually see the problems, and then they're like, well, there's this business system out there that I can utilize. Google and the internet doesn't fully give all the information about what it takes to run that type of loophole. And I want to say loophole for a certain instance because, yes, we see them as businesses, but we have to remember, LLCs are a formalized business structure, B Corps, all of that. But 501c3 started as a loophole. So it still operates as a loophole, people have just figured out how to apply a business mindset into it to make it work for them. And so when we talk about creating cash flow without grants, first off, I tell people you have to realize as a nonprofit founder, you are an entrepreneur. This is a full-time job. This is not a part-time job. And I say it's a full-time job because raising money is a full-time job. I used to work as a grant writer, and a lot of people call me up and say, Jasmine, we need this grant like immediately. And I'm like, that is not going to happen. That's just not because grant cycles are month long. If you apply for a grant in the summer, it's actually that the foundation is not going to give it to you in the fall. If you apply for a grant in the fall, the foundation is actually not going to give it to you in the spring. And so that information is not out there. So most people think if I apply for it in spring, I'm gonna get it 2 months later. No, like that's not it. And so when I talk to people, I always advise them to, one, be a full-time entrepreneur, two, to make sure that your finances, personal finances, are in order. And these are all steps to what I'm getting to of creating cash flow without grants. But your personal finances have to be in order. For the first 5 years of your nonprofit, you might have to self-fund / bootstrap yourself. Emergencies come up, COVID came, in the midst.
Right.
VCs and pitch competitions and all these different type of funding sources diminished a little bit. So you have to have your personal finances ready to be able to bootstrap your business to the place it needs to be. And then lastly, you have to have a relationship with the community you want to impact. A lot of people come up to me and they're like, Jasmine, I did one event and I put all my money into this event and nobody showed up. And, the first thing I asked them is, did you know the community? And, people will be like, well, kind of, I know so-and-so in there, but I'm just going to move to a different community because they're easier. That is the worst mindset to have on this, because there's no such thing as a more difficult community. You have to know how to interact with that community. You have to know how to raise money out of that community. They might raise money a different way. And when I say raise money, if you go into one community trying to do a gala, but they actually like a roller skating rink fundraiser or something fun, you're not going to make money. So you definitely have to get to your community. But when it comes to raising cash flow without grants, the biggest thing is to realize grants are capital. If anybody has listened to this, please write that down. Grants are capital. And capital is used to leverage growth. And when we use it to leverage growth, that means that there's something else that is already growing, but we need to leverage it more to grow more. So meaning you're not going to turn to grants for the first thing. That's going to be maybe the last thing or the middle thing, but there's already a sustainable source that is creating cash flow for you. Then you put a grant on it to leverage growth. And so how do we create that sustainable, little pocket? Well, first is through your programs. Your programs are the wheels to your organization. And with your programs, you have to figure out fundraisers per each program. Most people do one fundraiser for the year and they try to cover their whole annual budget with that one fundraiser, and they're like, oh my gosh, where did the money go? No, you have to have multiple fundraisers. I always tell people, if you have 2 programs, you need to have 2 fundraisers. If you have 5 programs, you need to figure out 5 different income sources to support those 5 programs, because the way grants work nowadays in the nonprofit world, it's by program specific budgets. They're not going to ask for your annual budget most of the time. They're going to ask, how are you spending the financials on this one program? And so going back to that, you need a fundraiser that is able to break even on your program. Everybody write that down. Break even on your program. What most people do is they get a donation of $10,000 and they know that their program runs for the year on $5,000, and they'll put the whole $10,000 on the program, and then they look at the end of the year or a situation comes up or they need to pay salaries and they're like, where did all our money go? Break even. If you get $10,000, put $5,000. You paid that program off. It's good for the year. Use the $5,000 elsewhere. Move it up. You have to pay salaries. You have to start earning a salary. Let me say that for all the nonprofit founders out there. You have to start earning a salary. You have to pay bills, rent. If you own a building, if you want to get a building, you have to start contracting people out to pay them and to get all this money. Because we all know to make money, you need money to first do it. And so that is how, in a sense, you start moving that money up. And then later on, we get into the investors and the donors. And the biggest thing with investors and donors is, I want to tell people is, don't turn to them first. You have to figure out your foundation first. If you cannot figure out how to raise and fundraise out of your community, keep going back to the drawing board until you figure it out. The nonprofit world is a slow process. You might feel like you have to rush into it and keep going and going and going, but this is a slow process. The community isn't a slow process. The community changes always. And so go back to the drawing board, figure out your fundraisers, make your fundraisers work for you, because the community is what's going to fund you in the end. And then investors and donors, I like to call them the allowance givers, because they give your allowance. You don't completely rely on your allowance, but it's good to like not have to pay for pencils or books or certain things time to time out of your program. That doesn't mean, with your foundation, you can't pay for it. More than likely, if your foundation is right, if your fundraisers are breaking even, yes, you have the money to pay for it, but it doesn't hurt if an investor or donor comes in and pay for it, and you get to use that money and move it up elsewhere. So that is how the short to long explanation of how to create cash flow without grants. But most importantly, remember, hitting your programs, breaking even on your programs, moving the money up. Then we can talk about investors and donors as allowance. And then lastly, we can talk about using grants as capital. So.
Awesome, guys. So she gave you the step-by-step process over there. You just have to implement it correctly, right? Make sure you implement that. Go back to the drawing board, because I love, Jasmine, that you gave some very important steps, right? Oftentimes as new nonprofit owners, they'll tend to go to the drawing board and try to hit the ground running. But I love that you share that this is a slow process, right? You have to be prepared for the long haul when you talk about starting a nonprofit organization. So with that said, Jasmine, you, in your company is Empower You. How do you help support those who want to start up in your company?
Yeah, so Empower You, and I have to say, Empower You is not a nonprofit. A lot of people, that's like probably one of the most misconceptions I get, because I talk about nonprofit so much. So they're like, you run a nonprofit. And I'm like, no, I got into the for-profit game. And surprisingly, the tech startup game, one of the most difficult but most rewarding games. And so with Empower You, it is a marketplace that connects underrepresented communities to nonprofit programs. Both me and my COO have worked as business consultants for nonprofits, and we both are now in the tech startup world. So it was a perfect fit. But most importantly, we work with grassroots organizations. We work with BIPOC communities. And so when we look at that and we looked at our past work, we became frustrated that small to medium-sized nonprofits were not being seen. Most importantly, if you Googled them, you had to know their specific name. If you Google nonprofit programs, they don't pop up. If you go on social media, for example, you have to know their specific name or know a hashtag to find them. And so our communities, we felt, deserve more access to the resources that they need. They deserve more access to the grassroots organizations who are right there in their backyard, solving the exact problems that they are facing day to day, and have a more immediate response to give them the resources that they need. And so, yes, I am the founder and CEO, but I can't do this without my team. And that's what we do on a daily basis. We're in the process. We have our prototype. So you can definitely go to empoweryou.com and you can look and you can be like, oh, this is nice, I'm interested. It is a platform. If you are a person looking for resources, you can sign up directly with that nonprofit. So you don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, I got to go on their website, then I got to contact them. No, it's a one-stop shop, direct access. But yeah, that's what I do. I got into the for-profit game, but most importantly, I got into the social impact game. And I like to point that out because, we hear about tech startups, but social impact is like the small world in the tech industry that's kind of coming up. It's your Khan Academies that are coming up with them. And so, yes, Khan Academy is a 501c3, but we like to label them as a social enterprise because of the way they have scaled their capital and surpassed growth in their industry. And so now, if you go to my Instagram, I talk about social impact a lot because I am pushing for our grassroots organizations to become social enterprise companies, to begin to change their mindset, to raise capital from venture capitalists, to raise it, like a sales pitch competitions. I've seen so many pitch competitions that are for 501c3, and you can raise more money than any grant. So.
Wow, that's awesome. So you know what? I need to follow up with you. My friend and I also have a nonprofit. It's called Swing Into Their Dreams. We help support scholarships for students who want to attend HBCUs. So we definitely will be following up with you. We'll be coming back to this conversation. But guys, I highly implore that you follow up with Jasmine, because I know many of you, that social impact piece is very important to you. I highly recommend that you follow up with her. Follow her on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
Jasmine Fain _, so JASMINE, F as in food, AIN as in Nancy _ and literally my page is like a nonprofit influencer, all advice. Like if you're looking for advice or you're like, I can't remember what she talked about, there's probably a video or a post somewhere on my page about exactly what I'm talking about. So just please go scroll through there, comment and say how it impacted you, save it, but please utilize all those resources, because I post them because I want that knowledge out there, not because I want to be some influencer, but I want you to have this knowledge. Everything that I work with and gain, I put it out there for other people to learn too.
Wow. Well, we so appreciate you, Jasmine. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. I love your personality, and we definitely want to have you back on Financial Confidence.
Yes. And I would say one last thing I would like to say to any nonprofit out there that's just feeling a little down about themselves, especially during COVID, or you feel like this is your purpose and that maybe you don't know if you want to do it. I just want to say, yes, the nonprofit world is hard, but if it's your purpose, do not run from it. There are so many doors that are opening in these systems in the nonprofit world. If it's your purpose, do it. I know so many colleagues just on Instagram that drop tips and knowledge. I DM them, I get their emails. We have face-to-face conversations, and trust me, they will have open doors for you also. So don't feel like you're going in this alone. I know the nonprofit world, especially for BIPOC founders, seems very alone, but there is a community out there. Trust me, if you go on my Instagram, I probably have tagged them, all my colleagues. So just know you're not alone. You can do this, and this is your purpose and your fight.
Beautiful way to close out the show today. Thank you, Jasmine. All right, guys, this has been an amazing episode of Financial Confidence. Don't forget, we want to hear from you. So make sure you reach out to us. Don't forget, we have some freebies for you. Check it out up this direction. Text us at 312-487-3550. Our keyword is podcast FC. Don't forget to share this out, because sharing is caring. Like and subscribe, and continue to join us each day. Until then, you guys stay safe.